The security camera footage would later show exactly 11:47 p.m. when Marcus Chen first spotted the small bundle of blankets pressed against the loading dock of Chen Industries. What the cameras couldn't capture was the way his heart lurched when he realized those blankets were wrapped around a child, or how his hands trembled as he stepped out of his Mercedes into the Seattle rain. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus had built his tech empire from nothing, turning a small software startup into a billion-dollar corporation that employed thousands. At 42, he commanded boardrooms, influenced markets, and lived in a penthouse that overlooked Elliott Bay. Yet standing in that parking lot, watching a little girl sleep rough against his company's brick wall, he felt smaller than he had in decades. The rain had been falling steadily for hours, turning the October night cold and unforgiving. Marcus had only returned to the office because he'd forgotten an important contract, never expecting to find someone seeking shelter in his parking lot. Security should have caught this, he thought, but then realized with a sick feeling that he'd cut the overnight guard position last quarter to improve profit margins. The child stirred as his footsteps echoed across the wet asphalt. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with dark hair matted from rain and clothes that had seen better days. What made Marcus freeze entirely was what she clutched against, her chest, a worn photograph that even in the dim parking lot lighting he recognized instantly. It was his mother. Not a photo that looked like his mother, but the exact same photograph that had sat on his childhood dresser for years. The one taken at Pike Place Market when he was 7, showing his mother laughing as she held up a bouquet of flowers, her traditional Chinese dress bright against the market's bustling backdrop. The same photo he'd lost during one of their many moves when his mother was working 3 jobs to keep them afloat. The little girl's eyes opened, and she instinctively pulled the photograph closer to her chest, scrambling backward against the wall. Her eyes were wide, with the kind of fear that comes from experience, the wariness of someone far too young who had learned that adults couldn't always be trusted. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're safe." The girl said nothing, but her grip on the photograph tightened. Marcus could see her shivering. Whether from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. Probably both. "That's a beautiful photograph," he said gently, crouching down to a level but keeping his distance. "Can you tell me where you got it?" Still silence. The girl studied his face intently, as if searching for something. Marcus noticed she had his mother's eyes, the same dark brown, the same shape. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be. "My name is Marcus," he tried again. "What's yours?" "Lily," she whispered finally, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Lily Zhang." The surname hit Marcus like a physical blow. Zhang had been his mother's maiden name, the name she'd used before she married his father, before the divorce, before she'd taken it back again in her final years. But that was impossible. His mother had died 3 years ago, and she'd never mentioned having any other family. "Lily, are you hungry?" Marcus asked, forcing himself to focus on the immediate problem. A child was sleeping in his parking lot in the rain. Everything else could wait until she was safe and warm. She nodded hesitantly. "There's a diner about 2 blocks from here. Would you like to get something to eat? Something warm to drink?" Lily looked down at the photograph, then back at Marcus. "You look like her," she said suddenly. "Like who?" "Like the lady in the picture. You have the same nose, the same way of standing." Marcus felt his world tilt slightly. "Lily, where are your parents? Where do you live?" "Foster home," she said matter-of-factly. "But Mrs. Patterson said I was too much trouble. She dropped me off at the bus station yesterday and told me to figure it out myself." The casual way she delivered this information broke Marcus's heart. No child should speak about abandonment with such acceptance, as if it were just another fact of life. "Yesterday, you've been out here for 2 days, Lily shrugged. "I've been in worse places." Marcus stood up, pulling out his phone. His first instinct was to call the police, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she held that photograph, or the way she'd noticed their physical resemblance, or maybe it was just the feeling that there was more to this story than a simple case of a runaway foster child. "Lily, I'm going to make a phone call, okay? Just to find you somewhere safe and warm to stay tonight, but I'm not going to leave you here alone." She watched him dial, still clutching the photograph. Marcus called his assistant, despite the late hour. "Patricia, I need you to book a suite at the Fairmont tonight and call Dr. Sarah Williams, the pediatrician who does work for our employee health program. I need her to come to the hotel as soon as possible." He could hear the confusion in Patricia's voice, but she'd worked for him long enough to know that when Marcus used that tone, questions could wait until morning. After ending the call, Marcus turned back to Lily. "I've got you a room at a nice hotel for tonight. A doctor's going to check and make sure you're okay, and then we'll figure out what comes next. Does that sound all right?" "Why are you helping me?" Lily asked, the question carrying more weight than her years should have allowed. Marcus looked at the photograph still pressed against her chest, at the face of the woman who had raised him, who had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities she'd never had, who had died alone in a hospital bed while he was in Tokyo, closing a business deal. "Because someone should have helped you sooner," he said simply. The drive to the Fairmont was quiet, except for the rain against the windshield. Lily sat in the passenger seat, still holding the photograph, occasionally glancing at Marcus as if trying to solve a puzzle. He'd given her his jacket, which was far too big for her small frame, and cranked up the heat, but she was still shivering. "Are you going to call the police?" she asked as they pulled into the hotel's circular driveway. "Do you want me to?" She considered this. "They'll just put me back in the system. Find another foster family that doesn't really want me." "How many foster families have you had?" "7, she said without hesitation. "Since I was 6. When my grandmother died." "What happened to your parents?" "Never knew my dad. Mom died when I was little. Car accident. Grandmother raised me until she got sick." Marcus felt another piece of a puzzle he didn't understand yet, clicking into place. "What was your grandmother's name?" "Wei Zhang. She came here from China. When she was young, she used to tell me stories about the old country, about the family we left behind." Lily looked down at the photograph. "She gave me this before she died, said it was important that someday I'd understand why." Wei Zhang. Marcus's mind raced. His mother's Chinese name had been Wei, though she'd gone by Wendy in America. But Zhang was a common surname. This had to be a coincidence. The hotel staff, accustomed to Marcus's occasional unusual requests, efficiently arranged everything without question. Within an hour, Lily was in a suite with room service on the way, and Dr. Williams examining her in the bedroom while Marcus paced the living area. Dr. Williams emerged 20 minutes later, closing the door softly behind her. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had treated the children of Chen Industries employees for years. "Physically, she's malnourished and exhausted, but otherwise healthy," Dr. Williams reported quietly. "No signs of abuse, which is something. But Marcus, that child, has been through trauma. The way she responds to questions, the way she holds herself, she's been let down by a lot of adults." "What do I do?" "Tonight, let her sleep. Tomorrow, you call Child Protective Services and find out what her legal situation is." "But Marcus," Dr. Williams paused. "Why are you doing this? This isn't like you to get personally involved." Marcus had known Dr. Williams for 5 years. She'd seen him at company events, knew his reputation as a brilliant but somewhat detached businessman. He couldn't exactly explain that a homeless child was carrying a photograph of his dead mother. Someone needed to help her, he said simply. After Dr. Williams left, Marcus sat in the suite's living room while Lily slept in the bedroom. He'd ordered her favorite meal from room service, mac and cheese with chocolate milk, and watched her eat with the focused intensity of someone who wasn't sure when their next meal would come. She'd fallen asleep almost immediately after, still wearing his jacket, the photograph placed carefully on the nightstand beside her. Marcus pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in years. He called his Aunt Linda, his mother's sister who lived in Vancouver. "Marcus, it's past midnight. What's wrong?" "Aunt Linda, I need to ask you about Mom's family, her family in China." There was a long pause. "Your mother didn't like to talk about the family she left behind." "Why? Are you asking now? Did she have any siblings? Anyone who might have come to America later?" Another pause, longer this time. "Marcus, there are things about your mother's past that she made me promise never to tell you. She said it would only bring pain." "What kind of things?" "She had a sister, younger sister named May. They were separated during the Cultural Revolution. Your mother came to America, but May stayed behind. They lost touch for decades." Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. "What happened to May?" "Your mother spent years trying to find her, finally made contact again in the early 2000s. May had married, had a daughter, but her husband died young. The daughter, your cousin, moved to America with her own child. Your mother helped them financially, but she never told you because preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "Because why?" "Because she was ashamed. Ashamed that she'd built this successful life while her sister struggled. Ashamed that when May died, she couldn't bring herself to reach out to the granddaughter. Your mother always meant to tell you, especially after your cousin died in that car accident. But then she got sick and—" Marcus closed his eyes. "Aunt Linda, what was the granddaughter's name?" "I think it was something like May Lynn, but she would have taken an American name probably. And her daughter, let me think. Something with flowers. Lily, maybe." "Yes, Lily." The phone slipped from Marcus's fingers, clattering to the floor. In the bedroom, Lily slept peacefully for the first time in days, unaware that the man who had rescued her was her family. Unaware that the photograph she'd carried for 4 years was the key to understanding why she looked in the mirror and saw features that didn't match any of her foster families. Unaware that her grandmother's dying words about finding the family they'd left behind were about to come true in the most unexpected way. Marcus picked up his phone and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. His mother had died carrying secrets, protecting him from what she saw as her failures, never knowing that those secrets might someday be the bridge to healing both their family and a lost little girl who shared their blood. Tomorrow, he would have to figure out how to tell a 10-year-old that the stranger who found her sleeping in a parking lot was actually the family she'd never known she had. Tonight, he would sit in this hotel room and guard her sleep the way his mother had once guarded his, the way family should. The morning came too soon and too slowly at the same time. Marcus had managed perhaps 2 hours of sleep on the suite's couch, waking every time Lily stirred or made a sound. At 7 a.m., she emerged from the bedroom wearing the same clothes from the night before, her hair still tangled, but looking more rested than she had in the parking lot. "Are you really rich?" she asked without preamble, looking around the luxurious suite. Marcus, who was reviewing emails on his laptop while drinking coffee, looked up. "Why do you ask?" "This place is fancy, and your car was really nice. And you called a doctor in the middle of the night like it was normal." "I do okay," Marcus said carefully. "Are you hungry? We can order breakfast." "I can eat hotel food every day." The question revealed so much about her experience with scarcity that Marcus had to pause. For now, yes, but Lily, we need to talk about what happens next. She sat cross-legged on the couch, suddenly looking much younger than her 10 years. You're going to send me back, aren't you? To Mrs. Patterson or another foster family? It's not that simple. There are laws about where children can stay, who can take care of them. I can take care of myself. I've been doing it for years anyway. Marcus set down his laptop. Lily, can I see that photograph again? The one you were holding last night? She retrieved it from the nightstand, handing it to him with obvious reluctance. Up close, in good lighting, there was no doubt. It was definitely the same photograph he remembered from his childhood. His mother, at maybe 25, standing in Pike Place Market with that infectious smile that could light up any room. Tell me about your grandmother, Marcus said gently. What else do you remember about her? She spoke Chinese when she was tired or upset. She made the best dumplings in the world. She told me stories about China, about the family we left behind. Lily paused. She said we had relatives in America, but she could never find them. What did she tell you about those relatives? Just that there was a sister who came to America first. Grandmother always regretted not coming with her. She said they lost each other during the war, and by the time they found each other again, too much time had passed. Marcus felt the weight of the truth settling on his shoulders. How do you tell a child that you're the family they've been looking for their entire life? How do you explain that their great-aunt was your mother, that the bureaucracy and fear had kept them apart when they could have been together? Lily, I need to make some phone calls today, legal calls, to find out exactly what your situation is with the foster system. But I want you to know that whatever happens, you're not going to be sleeping in parking lots anymore. Why do you care so much? She asked. The same question from the night before. Marcus looked at the photograph, at his mother's young face full of hope and dreams she couldn't have imagined would lead to this moment. Because I think your grandmother was right about having family in America. Before Lily could ask what he meant, Marcus's phone rang. Patricia, his assistant, never called this early unless something was urgent. Marcus, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a situation at the office. The Yamamoto deal is falling apart, and they're demanding a meeting this morning. Marcus looked at Lily, who was watching him with those dark eyes that reminded him so much of his mother. Cancel it. Cancel it? Marcus, this is a $200 million deal. Then reschedule it. I have something more important to take care of today. There was silence on the other end. In 5 years, Patricia had never heard Marcus call anything more important than a major business deal. Should I ask what's more important than $200 million? Marcus looked at Lily again, at this little girl who had been sleeping in his parking lot, carrying a piece of his family history without knowing it. Family, he said simply, and hung up. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls and bureaucracy. Marcus contacted lawyers, social workers, and child welfare advocates, trying to understand Lily's legal situation. The picture that emerged was depressingly familiar. A child lost in an overburdened system, passed from home to home, with no one truly advocating for her best interests. Mrs. Patterson, the foster mother who had abandoned her, claimed Lily had run away and filed a report stating she was uncontrollable. The social worker assigned to Lily's case seemed relieved that someone else was dealing with the situation, even temporarily. Mr. Chen, said Jennifer Morris, the caseworker during a phone call that afternoon. I appreciate your concern, but Lily Zhang is a ward of the state. We can't just let random citizens take responsibility for foster children, no matter how wealthy they are. What if I wasn't a random citizen? Marcus asked. What do you mean? What if I could prove I was family? There was a pause. Do you have any documentation of that relationship? Marcus looked across the hotel suite to where Lily was reading a book he'd had delivered from the hotel's gift shop. She'd been hesitant to ask for anything, but her eyes had lit up when she saw the books. "I'm working on getting that documentation," Marcus said. "How long would that process take?" "If you can prove kinship, it changes everything. Family members get priority for placement, especially over foster care. But the documentation has to be thorough: birth certificates, immigration records, DNA tests if necessary." After ending the call, Marcus sat quietly for a moment. DNA tests. Of course, that would be the easiest way to prove what he already knew in his heart. But it would also mean revealing to Lily that the stranger who found her was actually her family, and he wasn't sure she was emotionally ready for that revelation. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, looking up from her book. "You look worried." "Just thinking about some complicated adult things." "How's the book?" "It's good. It's about a girl who finds out she's actually a princess, but she doesn't want to be. And because she likes her normal life?" Marcus smiled at the irony. "What do you think she should do?" "I think she should be grateful," Lily said seriously. "A lot of kids would love to have a family that wanted them, even if it meant their life had to change." The innocence of her answer and the underlying longing it revealed made Marcus's decision for him. She deserved to know the truth, but it had to be done carefully, with support systems in place. That evening, Marcus arranged for Dr. Williams to return, not for a medical check, but because he needed someone there who understood children when he told Lily the truth. He also called his Aunt Linda, asking her to drive down from Vancouver if possible. "You found her?" Linda said, her voice barely a whisper. "You found May's granddaughter?" "She found me, actually." "Linda, can you bring whatever documentation you have about Mom's family? Birth certificates, immigration papers, anything that might help prove the connection?" "Of course, Marcus, your mother would be so happy. She carried guilt about that lost family her entire life." As evening fell over Seattle, Marcus stood at the window of the hotel suite, watching the city lights begin to twinkle. In a few hours, he would sit down with a 10-year-old girl and explain that the photograph she'd been carrying was the bridge between her past and her future. That the grandmother who raised her was the sister of the woman who raised him. That the family she'd been searching for had been searching for her too, even if they didn't know it. Lily was curled up on the couch, reading her book about the reluctant princess. Every few minutes, she would glance at Marcus, as if trying to solve a puzzle she couldn't quite figure out. Soon, all the pieces would fall into place, and their lives would change forever. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and social workers and bureaucracy, but tonight was about family finding family, about a lost little girl, learning that sometimes the greatest discoveries happen in the most unexpected places, even in corporate parking lots on rainy Seattle nights. The truth, Marcus had learned, had perfect timing. And for Lily Zhang, that time was finally now. Dr. Williams arrived at the hotel suite precisely at 8 o'clock, carrying a small medical bag and the kind of gentle demeanor that made children feel safe. Marcus had spent the better part of an hour explaining the situation to her, though he'd kept the family connection vague, saying only that he believed there might be a relationship between him and Lily that needed to be explored carefully. Lily looked up from her book when Dr. Williams entered, immediately wary. She'd learned to be suspicious of adults who claimed they were there to help, especially official-looking ones. "Hi, Lily," Dr. Williams said, sitting down in a chair across from the couch rather than looming over her. "I'm Sarah. We met briefly last night, but you were pretty tired. How are you feeling today?" "Fine," Lily answered automatically, the standard response of a child who'd learned that admitting to feeling anything other than fine often led to more questions she didn't want to answer. "That's good. I brought some things I thought you might like." Dr. Williams reached into her bag and pulled out a small sketch pad and a set of colored pencils. "Mr. Chen mentioned you might like to draw." Lily's eyes lit up despite her wariness. Art supplies were a luxury she'd rarely been allowed in foster homes, where anything that could make a mess was usually forbidden. "These are for me?" "Absolutely. Drawing can be a really good way to express feelings when words feel too hard." Marcus watched the interaction, impressed by Dr. Williams' gentle approach. He'd asked her to be present, not just for Lily's emotional support, but because he needed guidance on how to handle what he was about to reveal. How do you tell a child that their entire understanding of their place in the world is about to change? "Lily," Marcus said, settling into a chair near her, "Dr. Williams is here because I need to share something important with you, and I want to make sure you have support while we talk about it." Lily set down the colored pencils, her defenses immediately rising. In her experience, conversations that started with, "I need to share something important," rarely ended well. "Am I in trouble?" "No, you're not in trouble. But what I'm going to tell you might be surprising, maybe even overwhelming. Do you remember yesterday when you said I looked like the lady in your photograph?" Lily nodded, glancing toward the nightstand where the photo still rested. "And you told me about your grandmother, about how she said you had family in America that she could never find?" Another nod, more hesitant this time. Marcus took a deep breath. "Lily, I think your grandmother was right. I think we are family." The room went silent, except for the distant hum of Seattle traffic far below. Lily stared at Marcus, her young mind trying to process what he just said. "What do you mean?" she asked finally. "The woman in your photograph is my mother. Not someone who looks like my mother, but actually my mother. Her name was Wendy Chen, but her Chinese name was Wei. I think she was your grandmother's sister." Lily looked at the photograph, then back at Marcus, then at Dr. Williams, as if seeking confirmation that this conversation was really happening. "But that would make you my..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Your great-uncle," Marcus said gently. "Your family." For a long moment, Lily didn't react at all. Then, unexpectedly, she started to cry. Not the dramatic sobbing of a child having a tantrum, but the quiet, overwhelmed tears of someone who had carried the weight of being alone for so long that the possibility of belonging somewhere felt too enormous to believe. Dr. Williams moved to sit beside her on the couch, offering tissues and a reassuring presence while Lily processed the revelation. Marcus stayed where he was, giving her space while his own emotions threatened to overwhelm him. Finding family he'd never known existed felt like receiving a gift from his mother beyond the grave. "How do you know for sure?" Lily asked when she'd regained her composure. "We'll need to do some tests to be completely certain," Marcus said. "DNA tests that will prove the connection scientifically. But I called my Aunt Linda last night, and she confirmed that my mother had a younger sister named May who stayed in China. May would have been your grandmother." "Grandmother's name was May," Lily whispered. "May Zhang. Linda is driving down from Vancouver tonight. She has old documents, photographs, letters that my mother kept, things that will help us understand the whole story." Lily was quiet for several minutes, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her expression was guarded again. "What happens if the tests prove we're related? What happens to me then?" The question revealed the heart of her fear. In Lily's experience, adults made promises they didn't keep. Foster families who said they wanted her eventually decided she was too much trouble. Social workers who promised stability moved her to new homes when it was convenient. Even if Marcus was telling the truth about being family, what guarantee did she have that he actually wanted her? "If the tests confirm what I believe is true," Marcus said carefully, "then you'll never have to go back to the foster system. You'll Have a home, a real home, for as long as you want it. With you, if that's what you want. I know this is all very sudden and confusing. You don't have to make any decisions right now. Dr. Williams spoke up gently. Lily, it's okay to feel scared or overwhelmed or even excited. Finding out you have family is a big thing, and all your feelings about it are valid. I used to dream about this, Lily admitted quietly. About someone coming to find me who was actually related to me. But I always thought it was just pretending. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I used to wonder about it too. My mother talked sometimes about the family she'd left behind in China, but she never gave me details. I think she felt guilty about the good life she'd built here while her sister struggled. Grandmother talked about her sister in America all the time. She said Wei was the smart one, the brave one, who made the hard choice to leave everything behind for a better life. They both were brave, Marcus said. It takes courage to leave everything you know, and it also takes courage to stay and take care of the people who can't leave. A knock at the door interrupted the conversation. Marcus opened it to find his Aunt Linda, a slight woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a large manila envelope and looked both nervous and excited. Linda, Marcus said, embracing her. Thank you for coming so quickly. Linda stepped into the suite and immediately spotted Lily on the couch. Her hand flew to her mouth and her eyes filled with tears. Oh my God, she whispered. She looks just like May at that age. Marcus, the resemblance is unmistakable. Lily studied Linda with the same analytical intensity she'd shown Marcus, taking in her features, her mannerisms, looking for the connections that might prove this impossible. Story was true. You must be Lily, Linda said, composing herself and approaching the couch. I'm Linda, Marcus's aunt. I was your grandmother's sister-in-law, married to Wei's brother for 37 years before he passed. You knew my grandmother? Not personally, but I knew about her. Your grandmother and Marcus's mother wrote letters back and forth for years after they reconnected. Wei kept every single one. Linda held up the manila envelope. I brought copies of some of them, along with other documents that might help piece together your family history. Linda sat down and opened the envelope, carefully removing old letters written in both Chinese and English, faded photographs, and official documents. She spread them on the coffee table like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. This, she said, holding up a photograph, is Wei and May together in Shanghai in 1962, before Wei left for America. The photograph showed two young women, standing arm in arm, smiling at the camera. The resemblance between them was clear, and both looked remarkably like Lily. The same eyes, the same delicate bone structure, the same way of holding their heads, slightly tilted when they smiled. And this, Linda continued, producing a letter, is one of the last letters Wei received from May about 12 years ago. She wrote about her granddaughter, about how proud she was of the little girl who loved to draw and read and ask questions, about everything. Lily reached for the letter with trembling hands. Even though it was written in Chinese characters she couldn't read, seeing her grandmother's handwriting was like receiving a message from beyond. What does it say? She asked. Linda took the letter and translated slowly. She writes, "My little Lily is growing so fast. She reminds me of you at that age, always curious, always dreaming of bigger things. She asks me about America, about the sister I lost and found again. I tell her stories about you, about how brave you were to leave everything behind. I hope someday she can be that brave too, that she can find the family we left scattered across the world." The room was silent as the weight of those words settled over them. Lily's grandmother had been preparing her for this moment without either of them knowing it. "There's more," Linda said gently. "Wei tried to help when she learned about your mother's death. She sent money through an international transfer service, but by the time it arrived, you'd already been placed in foster care, and May was too sick to fight the bureaucracy. "My mother tried to bring you here," Marcus said quietly. "She tried to help, but she didn't know how to navigate the system from so far away." "Why didn't she ever tell you about us?" Lily asked. Linda and Marcus exchanged glances. It was Linda who answered. "Your great-aunt Wei carried a lot of guilt about leaving China, about building a successful life while her sister struggled. She was afraid that if Marcus knew about you, he would feel obligated to help out of duty rather than love. She wanted to protect everyone from what she saw as her burden. But that was never her burden to carry alone," Marcus said, understanding his mother's motivations, but wishing she'd trusted him with the truth. Dr. Williams had been quietly observing the family reunion, making notes about Lily's emotional responses and overall adjustment to the overwhelming news. "Lily," she said, gently, "how are you feeling about all of this?" Lily looked around the room at these three adults who had appeared in her life in the span of 24 hours, each offering her something she'd never had before: family, stability, belonging. It was everything she'd dreamed of, and more terrifying than anything she'd ever faced. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if the tests say we're not really related? What if this is all a mistake?" "Then we'll figure out what comes next," Marcus said simply. "But Lily, even if somehow the DNA tests don't confirm what we all believe to be true, you still wouldn't go back to sleeping in parking lots. You still wouldn't go back to foster homes that don't want you. One way or another, you'll be safe. But if we are related, what kind of life would I have? I don't know how to live like rich people. I don't know how to act in fancy places." Marcus smiled. "I didn't either when I was your age. My mother and I lived in a tiny apartment, and she worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. Everything I learned about success, I learned later. What matters isn't whether you know how to live like wealthy people. What matters is whether you're ready to be part of a family that wants you exactly as you are." Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a small jewelry box. "Lily, I brought something that belonged to your grandmother. Wei asked me to keep it safe in case we ever found May's family." She opened the box to reveal a delicate jade bracelet carved with intricate Chinese symbols. "This was passed down through your grandmother's family for generations. Wei wanted it to go to May's descendants someday." Lily stared at the bracelet. This tangible connection to a heritage she'd never fully understood. What do the symbols mean? They represent family, continuity, and the belief that love transcends time and distance, Linda explained. "Your great-grandmother wore this, and your grandmother, and your great-aunt. Now it comes to you." As Linda fastened the bracelet around Lily's tiny wrist, the child seemed to transform before their eyes. The guarded, defensive posture she'd maintained since Marcus found her began to soften. For the first time in years, maybe in her entire life, Lily looked like she was beginning to believe she might actually belong somewhere. The next morning brought the practical realities of their situation. Marcus had arranged for a private DNA testing service to come to the hotel, ensuring both privacy and the fastest possible results. While they waited for the technician to arrive, he and Lily sat at the suite's dining table, working through the logistics of what would happen next. "The social worker, Ms. Morris, will need to be involved in any placement decisions," Marcus explained. "Even if the DNA confirms our relationship, there will be paperwork, home studies, background checks. The system moves slowly." "How slowly?" Lily asked. "Weeks, maybe months. But in the meantime, we can file for emergency kinship placement. That would allow you to stay with me while the permanent arrangements are being processed." Lily nodded, trying to absorb the adult complexities that would determine her future. "What if your life is too different? What if I don't fit?" It was a fair question. Marcus lived in a penthouse apartment, worked 60-hour weeks, traveled frequently for business. His world was boardrooms and international deals and social events that required tuxedos. Lily's world was public schools and hand-me-down clothes and the constant uncertainty of temporary placement. "My life will change," Marcus said honestly. "It'll have to. But Lily, I want it to change. I've spent so many years focused on building a business, on achieving success that I forgot about building a life. You're giving me a chance to remember what's actually important. What if I'm too much trouble? What if you decide you don't want me after all?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. How many times had this 10-year-old been made to feel like she was too much trouble? How many adults had started with good intentions only to give up when caring for her became inconvenient? "Lily, I need you to understand something. Family isn't something you earn by being easy or convenient. Family isn't something you can lose by making mistakes or having bad days. Family is something you belong to, period. If we are related, and I believe we are, then you're my family, whether you're easy or difficult, whether you're happy or sad, whether you're on your best behavior or having the worst day of your life. How do you know that? You've never had kids before." "You're right, I haven't, but I know what it felt like to grow up with a mother who loved me unconditionally, even when we didn't have much else. I know what it means to be wanted, and I want to give that to you." The DNA technician arrived mid-morning, a professional woman who explained the simple cheek swab process and assured them the results would be available within 48 hours. As she packed up her equipment, she mentioned that based on preliminary visual assessment, she would be surprised if the test didn't confirm a family relationship. After she left, Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. "Lily, would you like to see where I live? My actual home, not just this hotel. Your penthouse. It's just an apartment, a big apartment, but still just a place where someone lives. I thought maybe you'd like to see it, get a sense of what life might be like." An hour later, they stood in the marble-floored lobby of Marcus's downtown high-rise, waiting for the elevator that would take them to the top floor. Lily craned her neck to look up at the soaring ceiling, clearly intimidated by the luxury surrounding her. "This is fancier than the hotel," she whispered. "The doorman's name is George," Marcus said as they stepped into the elevator. "He's worked here for 15 years and knows everything that happens in the building. He has 3 grandchildren about your age." When the elevator opened directly into Marcus's penthouse, Lily stepped out slowly, taking in the floor-to-ceiling. Windows that offered panoramic views of Seattle, the modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, the kitchen that was bigger than most of the apartments she'd lived in. "This is where you live?" she asked, her voice small. "This is where I sleep and eat and work," Marcus corrected, "but I'm not sure I've ever really lived here. It's always felt more like a very expensive hotel room." Lily walked to the windows, pressing her face against the glass to look down at the city far below. "You can see everything from up here. Sometimes I think you can see too much. It makes you feel separated from everything that's actually happening down there, where real people live real lives." "Would I have my own room?" "You could have 2 rooms if you wanted. There are 4 bedrooms in this place and I only use B1. Lily continued her exploration, running her hands along surfaces that were probably worth more than most families spent in a year. When she reached Marcus's home office, she stopped abruptly. "Is that your mother?" she asked, pointing to a framed photograph on his desk. Marcus joined her, looking at the formal portrait that had been taken for his mother's university faculty page. "Yes, that's her, Wei Chen, though she went by Wendy here." Lily studied the photograph intently, then pulled the old picture from her pocket. Side by side, the family resemblance was unmistakable. Same eyes, same cheekbones, same gentle smile. She was beautiful, Lily said softly. She was. And she was kind and smart, and she worked harder than anyone I've ever known. I think you would have liked her. Do you think she would have liked me? Marcus looked down at this little girl who had appeared in his life like an answer to a prayer he'd never known how to voice. Lily, I think she would have loved you. I think she would have been so proud to know that May's granddaughter grew up to be brave and resilient and kind, despite everything you've been through. They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the penthouse, with Marcus explaining how different rooms could be modified to make them more suitable for a child. The formal dining room could become a study space. One of the guest bedrooms could be converted into an art studio where Lily could draw and paint without worrying about making messes. The huge living room could accommodate friends for sleepovers and movie nights. As the day wore on, Marcus found himself seeing his home through Lily's eyes. The expensive furniture and designer decorations that had once seemed like symbols of his success now looked cold and impersonal. This wasn't a place where a child could be comfortable, where a family could build memories together. Marcus, Lily said, as they sat on the couch watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in shades of gold and pink. If the tests say we're family, if I get to stay with you, would you teach me about our relatives, about the family in China? Of course. And we could learn together. I realized yesterday that I know embarrassingly little about my mother's background, about the family she left behind. Could we maybe visit China someday, to see where grandmother and your mother grew up? Marcus felt his heart expand with the simple hopefulness of her question. Here was a child who had been abandoned repeatedly, who had every reason to be cynical about the future, still dreaming about possibilities and adventures they might share. I think that's a wonderful idea, he said. I think your grandmother and my mother would both love knowing that their granddaughter and son were making that journey together. That evening back at the hotel, Marcus tucked Lily into bed with the same care his mother had once shown him. She was wearing new pajamas they'd bought during an impromptu shopping trip, soft and warm and decorated with stars. The jade bracelet caught the light on her wrist, a bridge between her past and her potential future. Marcus, she said as he was about to turn off the bedside lamp. Yes? Thank you for finding me. Thank you for carrying that photograph all these years. Thank you for being brave enough to sleep in a parking lot where someone who needed to find you would notice you. Do you really think it happened that way? Like it was meant to be? Marcus thought about the series of coincidences that had led to this moment. His decision to work late, his forgotten contract, his choice to enter through the back entrance where the loading dock was located. Lily's foster mother abandoning her at exactly the right time, in exactly the right place. The photograph that had survived years of moves and uncertainty to serve as proof of their connection. I think, he said carefully, that sometimes the universe conspires to heal broken things. Your family was broken when your great-grandmother and grandmother were separated. My family was broken when my mother died, carrying secrets she thought would burden me. Maybe finding each other is how those broken pieces get put back together. Lily smiled, the first completely unguarded smile Marcus had seen from her. I hope the tests say yes. Me too, Marcus whispered, and meant it with every fiber of his being. 2 floors below, in the hotel business center, Marcus worked late into the night, restructuring his schedule and responsibilities to accommodate the possibility that his life was about to change in the most fundamental way possible. Tomorrow, the DNA results would arrive, and with them the scientific confirmation of what his heart already knew to be true. But tonight, for the first time since his mother's death, Marcus Chen felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, protecting exactly the person he was meant to protect, building exactly the family he never knew he needed. The call came at exactly 2:17 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. Marcus was in his temporary office at the hotel, reviewing quarterly projections, while Lily worked on a drawing at the nearby table, when his phone buzzed with the number he'd been waiting for. "Mr. Chen, this is Dr. Patricia Reeves from Northwest. Genetic testing, I have your results." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Across the table, Lily looked up from her artwork, sensing the importance of the moment even before Marcus spoke. "And?" Marcus asked, though he already knew what she would say. "The DNA analysis confirms a familial relationship consistent with great-uncle and great-niece. The probability of relatedness is 97%. Mr. Chen, there's no doubt that you and Lily Zhang are family." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying lift from his shoulders. When he opened them, Lily was staring at him intently, reading his expression for the answer that would determine the rest of her life. "We're family," he said simply. Lily's face transformed, cycling through disbelief, joy, and something that looked like relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. She didn't say anything, just stood up from her chair and walked around the table to where Marcus sat. Without hesitation, she climbed into his lap and buried her face against his shoulder. For the first time in her 10 years, Lily Zhang had scientific proof that she belonged to someone. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and legal consultations. Jennifer Morris, the caseworker, was stunned by the DNA results and immediately began the paperwork for emergency kinship placement. Marcus's lawyer, David Kim, explained the process for obtaining permanent guardianship and eventually adoption if that's what they both wanted. "This is highly unusual," Morris admitted during a conference call. "We don't often see cases where a relative appears out of nowhere to claim a child, especially someone with your resources and background check, Mr. Chen. Lily is extraordinarily fortunate." "I'm the fortunate one," Marcus corrected, watching Lily as she sat on the hotel room floor, carefully arranging the family photographs Linda had brought into a timeline that told the story of their reconnected family. The legal wheels moved, with surprising speed once the DNA evidence was presented. Within a week, Marcus had temporary custody of Lily, with a court date scheduled for the following month to finalize permanent arrangements. Mrs. Patterson, the foster mother who had abandoned her, was facing charges for child endangerment and was no longer part of the equation. But the real work began when they moved from the hotel to Marcus's penthouse. The first night was awkward for both of them. Marcus, who hadn't shared his living space with anyone in years, found himself hyper-aware of every sound Lily made. Lily, overwhelmed by the luxury and space around her, seemed to shrink into herself, touching nothing and speaking in whispers as if afraid she might break something valuable. Marcus found her at 2 a.m., sitting by the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, staring out at the city lights below. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling down beside her. "It's too quiet," she said. In foster homes, there were always other kids or TV or Mrs. Patterson yelling at someone. Here it's just silent. Marcus nodded, understanding. His penthouse, designed for a successful bachelor, had prioritized privacy and tranquility. For a child who had never experienced true quiet, the silence might feel more isolating than peaceful. "Would it help if we got you a radio for your room? Or we could leave some soft music playing?" "Maybe. It's not just the quiet, though. Everything here is so perfect, I'm afraid to touch anything." Marcus looked around at his carefully curated living space, seeing it through the eyes of a 10-year-old who had spent years being told not to make messes, not to break things, not to be too much trouble. "Lily, this is your home now. That means you get to live in it, not just exist in it." If something breaks, we'll fix it or replace it. If something gets messy, we'll clean it up. That's what homes are for. What if I forget and act like I did in foster care? What if I'm loud or messy or difficult? Marcus turned to face her fully. Be de du set and dome. Then you'll be loud or messy or difficult, and I'll still be your family. Do you remember what I told you about family being something you belong to, not something you earn? She nodded. I meant that. There's nothing you could do that would make me not want you here. Nothing. The next morning, Marcus made a decision that surprised his business associates and delighted Lily. He hired an interior designer, but not to make his penthouse more luxurious. Instead, he asked her to make it more livable for a family. I want it to feel like a home where a child can be comfortable, he explained to the designer, Sarah Martinez, as Lily explored fabric samples and paint colors with obvious excitement. Less museum, more family space. Over the following weeks, the penthouse transformed. The formal dining room became a combined homework and art space, with a large table where Lily could spread out school projects and drawing supplies. One of the guest bedrooms was converted into what Lily dubbed her creation room, with easels, craft supplies, and a reading nook by the window. The sterile living room was softened with comfortable furniture, family photographs, and even a small piano. After Marcus discovered that Lily was interested in learning to play, most importantly, they established routines that made the space feel like home. Morning pancakes at the kitchen island while they planned their days, afternoon homework sessions where Marcus helped with math problems and Lily helped him understand social media. Evening walks around the neighborhood with stops at the local ice cream shop that quickly learned Lily's favorite flavors. Marcus's work life changed dramatically as well. He delegated more responsibilities to his management team, stopped taking business trips that would require him to be away overnight, and implemented a strict policy of being home by 6 p.m. every evening. His assistant Patricia, who had worked with him for 5 years, was amazed by the transformation. "You're a completely different person," she observed one afternoon when Marcus refused a conference call that would have run past dinner time. "I've never seen you prioritize anything over business before." "I never had anything more important than business before," Marcus replied simply. The adjustment wasn't without challenges. Lily had nightmares during her first month in the penthouse. Dreams, where social workers came to take her away, or where Marcus decided he didn't want her anymore. Marcus learned to check on her at night, to provide reassurance when she woke up scared, and to be patient with the process of healing from years of instability. There were also practical hurdles. Lily had never lived with such abundance, and simple decisions like choosing what to wear or what to eat for breakfast could be overwhelming when presented with unlimited options. Marcus learned to offer choices between 2 or 3 alternatives rather than open-ended questions that might trigger anxiety about making the wrong decision. School presented its own set of challenges. Marcus enrolled Lily in Lakeside Academy, a prestigious private school, thinking he was giving her the best educational opportunities. But Lily, who had attended underfunded public schools her entire life, felt lost and intimidated by the academic expectations and social dynamics of wealthy classmates. After 2 weeks of watching her struggle, Marcus sat down with Lily for a serious conversation. "Are you happy at Lakeside?" he asked directly. Lily, who had been trying to hide her difficulties to avoid seeming ungrateful, finally broke down. "I don't understand half of what they're talking about. Everyone else has been taking advanced classes since kindergarten. They assume I know things I've never learned, and they look at me like I don't belong there." "Because you don't," Marcus said gently. "Not yet, anyway. I made a mistake thinking that the most expensive school would automatically be the best, fit for you. Together, they researched other options, finally settling on Roosevelt Elementary, a well-regarded public school with smaller class sizes and a reputation for supporting students from diverse backgrounds. The transition was immediate and positive. Within a week, Lily had made 2 friends and was participating enthusiastically in class discussions. "It feels like a place where I can just be myself," she explained to Marcus over dinner. "I don't have to pretend to know things I don't know or pretend to be someone I'm not." The comment made Marcus reflect on his own life, on the ways he had spent years pretending to be someone he thought he should be rather than accepting who he actually was. Lily was teaching him about authenticity in ways he hadn't expected. 3 months after moving in together, they faced their first major test. Marcus received an offer to sell Chen Industries for an astronomical sum, enough money to secure not just his future, but generations of his family's futures. The buyers wanted him to stay on as CEO for a transitional period that would require extensive travel and long hours. 5 years earlier, Marcus wouldn't have hesitated. The financial security and professional validation would have been irresistible. But sitting in his lawyer's office, reviewing the terms of the deal, all he could think about was Lily's nightmares, her need for stability, the routine they had built together that was helping her heal from years of abandonment. "I need time to think about this," Marcus told his lawyer, who looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "Marcus, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They're offering you more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. I understand that, but I need to consider how it would affect my family." That evening, Marcus sat down with Lily to explain the situation in age-appropriate terms. He told her about the business opportunity, about the financial benefits, but also about the travel and time commitments it would require. "What do you want to do?" Lily asked when he finished explaining. "I want to know what you think. This decision affects both of us." Lily was quiet for a long time, playing with the jade bracelet she now wore every day. "Would you be happy if you sold your company?" "I don't know. I used to think business success was the most important thing in the world. Now I'm not sure." "What do you think is most important now?" Marcus looked at this wise 10-year-old who had wandered into his life and changed everything about how he understood happiness and success. "Family. Being present for the people you love. Building something that matters more than money." "Then I think you already know what you want to do." Marcus called his lawyer the next morning and declined the offer. Instead, he restructured Chen Industries to make it less dependent on his personal involvement, hired additional executives to handle day-to-day operations, and established a foundation focused on supporting children in foster care. "You're turning down generational wealth to spend more time with a 10-year-old, his lawyer said, clearly baffled by the decision. "I'm choosing the kind of wealth that actually matters," Marcus corrected. 6 months after finding Lily in his parking lot, Marcus stood in a courthouse downtown, waiting for a judge to finalize the adoption that would make their family legally permanent. Lily wore a new dress for the occasion, navy blue with small white flowers, and the jade bracelet that connected her to generations of family she was finally learning about. Linda had driven down from Vancouver for the hearing, bringing with her a folder of documents that officially traced their family lineage back 3 generations. They now had birth certificates, immigration records, and family photographs that told the complete story of how 2 sisters separated by an ocean had been reunited through their descendants. "Are you nervous?" Linda asked Lily as they sat in the hallway outside the courtroom. "A little, but good nervous, like when you're about to open a present you really want." When their case was called, Marcus and Lily stood before Judge Elena Rodriguez, a kind woman who had presided over hundreds of adoption proceedings, but was clearly moved by their unusual story. "Mr. Chen," Judge Rodriguez said, in all my years. On the bench, I've never seen a case quite like this one. A child literally appearing in your life, carrying photographic evidence of your family connection, is the kind of story that makes you believe in fate. Your Honor, I've come to believe that some families are made by biology, some by choice, and some by providence. Lily and I are all three. Judge Rodriguez smiled and turned to Lily. Lily, do you understand what adoption means? It means Marcus will be my dad forever, legally and officially. It means I'll never have to worry about being taken away or moved to another family. It means I belong somewhere permanently. And is that what you want? More than anything in the world. Judge Rodriguez raised her gavel. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Washington, I hereby grant this petition for adoption. Marcus Chen, you are now the legal father of Lily Chen. Congratulations to your family. The gavel came down with a sound that echoed through the courtroom, finalizing what had begun with a chance encounter in a corporate parking lot on a rainy Seattle night. After the ceremony, Marcus, Lily, and Linda went to celebrate at the same diner where Marcus had first taken Lily for a meal. As they sat in a booth, sharing a celebratory sundae, Lily pulled out a piece of paper she had been carrying in her pocket. I wrote something, she said shyly, for today. She unfolded the paper and cleared her throat. It's called Finding Home. I used to think home was a place with walls and a roof where people let you stay until they decided you were too much trouble. I thought family was something other people had, something you could see but never touch, like looking at pictures in a magazine of places you'll never visit. But home isn't a building. Home is the person who finds you sleeping in a parking lot and sees family instead of a problem. Home is someone who changes their whole life because you matter more than anything they had before. Home is learning that you don't have to earn love or be perfect to deserve belonging. Family isn't just people who share your DNA. Family is people who share your heart. Family is someone who keeps a photograph of your grandmother for 40 years, just in case her granddaughter might someday need proof that she was loved. Family is choosing each other every day, not because you have to, but because you can't imagine doing anything else. I spent 10 years looking for home in all the wrong places. Turns out home was looking for me too, and we found each other exactly when we both needed it most. When she finished reading, the diner was completely quiet. Other customers had stopped their conversations to listen, and more than one person was wiping their eyes. Marcus felt his throat tighten with pride and love for this extraordinary child who had taught him more about life in 6 months than he had learned in 42 years. "Oh, that was beautiful," he said when he could trust his voice. "It's true," Lily replied simply. "Every word." As they walked home through downtown Seattle that evening, past the building where Chen Industries occupied 15 floors, past the parking lot where their story had begun, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. A year ago, he'd been a successful but lonely businessman whose greatest achievements were measured in stock prices and profit margins. Tonight, he was a father, walking home with his daughter, planning weekend activities and discussing homework assignments and looking forward to tucking her into bed with a story. They stopped at the loading dock where Marcus had first found Lily, the spot that would always mark the beginning of their family. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if Mrs. Patterson hadn't dropped me off at that bus station?" Lily asked, looking at the place where she had spent that cold, rainy night every day, Marcus admitted. "But I also think about how many things had to happen exactly the way they did for us to find each other. Your grandmother keeping that photograph, my mother writing those letters, me forgetting a contract and coming back to the office late. You choosing this particular place to seek shelter. Grandmother used to say that the universe has a way of healing broken things if you're patient enough to let it work." Marcus looked down at his daughter, this wise and resilient child who had survived abandonment and instability with her capacity for love intact, who had walked into his orderly but empty life and filled it with purpose he hadn't known he was missing. "I think your grandmother was right," he said. "I think we were both broken in different ways, and finding each other was how we got healed." As they continued their walk home, Lily slipped her small hand into Marcus's larger one, the jade bracelet catching the streetlight as it had caught the parking lot lights that first night. Behind them, the city hummed with its millions of individual stories, but ahead of them was home, family, and a future they would build together one day at a time. In the penthouse that night, as Marcus checked on Lily before going to bed himself, he found her already asleep, clutching the framed photograph of his mother that now sat on her nightstand next to the original worn copy she had carried for so long. Both images showed the same woman, the same smile, but now they represented not just the past, but the bridge to a future that neither Wei Chen nor Mei Jiang could have imagined when they were separated all those decades ago. Marcus kissed his daughter's forehead gently and whispered the words his mother had once whispered to him. "Sweet dreams, little one. Tomorrow will be even better than today." Outside the windows, Seattle sparkled in the darkness, full of stories yet to be told, families yet to be found, and miracles waiting to happen in the most unexpected places. But inside the penthouse, two people who had found their way to each other against impossible odds slept peacefully, finally home. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.